Change your paradigms. You may also want to write, shift your paradigms, one and the same thing. Throughout human history, philosophers have had different views about our universe. Thales believed that the earth is flat and floated in water like a log. Anaximenes believed the earth is flat but suspended in the air. Xenophanes believed the earth is flat with the upper side touching the air and the lower side extending without limit. The idea of a spherical earth was first proposed by Pythagoras approximately 500 BC, a concept that was later shared by Plato and Aristotle. The very first time that we thought about the solar system and the planets, it was proposed by Nicholas Copernicus, who suggested that the planets go around the sun. But he held the view that both the sun and the stars do not move at all. In 1609, Johannes Kepler refined the Copernican system and designed, or rather developed, a scientific model that explained the orbital movement of the planets around the sun. That same year, 1609, Galileo Galilei invented his telescope. And with a magnification of 9 times, he was able to view phenomenal sights like the 4 moons of Jupiter, the largest moons of Jupiter, and even the terrain of the moon, including its mountains and valleys. But while the idea of a spherical earth was gaining momentum, the evidence was overwhelming. The then bishops of the church refused anyone from advancing what they called heretical teachings about a spherical earth. Actually, they persecuted Galileo and arrested him so that he does not advance his views about a spherical world. You see, we never see the world as it is. We see the world as our instruments can allow. We never see the universe as it is. We see the universe as our instruments can allow. We see the universe as our lenses can allow. I want to ask you the question: how strong is the magnification of your lenses? You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are. You can be all around wealth and never see it. You can be all around opportunities and never see them, and never seize them. In fact, you can date your dream life partner, take coffee with him or her, and never realize it. You know, there are people who only notice scarcity and poverty because you see the world as you are. I'm telling you this. A nanny can raise a child, and 30 years later, that nanny is employed by the same child she nursed. They lived in the same house, but different worlds. A security guard can open the gate of an infant when they are going home for their very first time from hospital, and the same child employs the same security guard. They were in the same compound, but different worlds. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as your lenses can allow. You see, conventions teach us, if it looks like a duck, swims like a duck, quacks like a duck, then probably it's a duck. You see, this logic suggests you can identify an unknown subject by observing its habitual characteristics. What if you're observing your subject using inferior instruments? What if you're observing and judging me using inferior lenses? What if you're observing and judging me by your worldview, your limited worldview? Is your worldview the only reality? Precious friends, brothers and sisters, I want to tell you tonight, there's another reality that no eye has seen, no ear has heard, and no mind has conceived. That's why Scripture says, call unto me and I'll show you hidden things that you think not. You see, the highest form of ignorance is fighting something that you do not fully understand. An intelligent mind will entertain an idea even without accepting it. And the way to shift your paradigms, one word, exposure. That's why we travel to distant places. We don't travel to escape life. We travel so that life cannot escape us. Exposure brings the hidden to the surface. If a child grows seeing the mother growing cabbages small scale, and the father taking those cabbages to the local market on a donkey cart, then the dreams of that child are limited to either growing cabbages small scale or becoming a donkey operator, cart operator. I'll never forget one time we were at Luxor City, a small town in Egypt. There was a young man, approximately 15 years of age, who wanted to help us board the boat with my dear friend Dennis and a couple of people here. And I looked at the young man. I didn't need any assistance to board the boat. Number two, that boat did not need a conductor. It was a motorboat. But because he grew there, he was born there, he never went to school, the only activity on earth he knows is helping people get on the motorboat so that he can get some tips. You see, you're limited to what you've been exposed. Now, the 17th century, the king of Siam used to invite the ambassador of the Netherlands in the palace over the weekends and sometimes some of the evenings. He wanted to hear stories about Europe. One day, the Dutch ambassador said how water sometimes in his country during winter freezes to something like a solid, so much that a man, or even an elephant, if they ever existed in the Netherlands, could literally walk on water. The king of Siam, which is modern-day Thailand, couldn't take it. He felt taken for granted, and they never saw eye to eye anymore. He ordered his staff that guy should never get in that gate anymore for taking the king for granted. You see, ladies and gentlemen, the conformity of a testimony, or rather the credibility of a testimony, is limited to its conformity to your direct experiences. And given the king's 17th century experiences of a country in Southeast Asia, he never fathomed in his wildest imagination the very concept of ice. He couldn't handle it. You're limited to exposure. I'll never forget Easter this year. My Mercy, who is together with me here, said something interesting. Lover boy, you mean Facebook is that young? 2004. First, I was surprised that Mercy didn't know Facebook was started 2004, because I talk about it time and again. So I know sometimes not everybody listens to me. But what surprised me more is how our son Zig reacted. What? Facebook is so old. 2004. You see, the boy was born 2007. His world began 2007. Anything before 2007 is too old. I don't know whether your children are like my children, because the last 20 years there has been a phenomenal change in technology, so much that my own two children think I was born slightly after the days of the dinosaur. I still think I'm young. They think I'm almost expiring. But if you look at what has happened the last 20 years, the world has almost been the same for so long. Something phenomenal has happened, and we live in different worlds with them. Let me tell you this, all of us have biases. Some of them are universal. For example, whether you're conscious or not, we tend to trust tall people than shorter people. It's a natural. By the way, if you don't believe it, just go to a strange neighborhood. Go to a strange neighborhood, and if you're lost and you meet some boys playing football, as they traditionally do in Kenya, you're likely to ask the tallest kid in the team the direction. That boy could be the dumbest kid in the team. But the natural tendency is to ask the tallest among them. So the men here who are short, remember this, you've got to work twice as hard. That's the truth. We have a natural tendency of trusting attractive people much more. An extremely, exceptionally, extraordinarily attractive woman in the streets of Nairobi will easily con anyone by asking any man for directions. Very few men will escape if she's a crook. I hope that the attractive women can use the same energy to do proper marketing, maybe of proper products. The average African has a natural tendency of trusting white men than our black people. So if a white man here in Nairobi opened a restaurant or a boutique or an electronic shop or a restaurant, honestly, the average African is likely to trust that shop than our fellow countrymen and women. Is that a fact? I'll never forget March this year, I was invited to speak in a conference for women in digital technology. What surprised me a little bit was the fact that I was the only black trainer in that conference. All the other trainers were of Caucasian origin. I have no doubt in my mind that all the other trainers were very qualified. However, during tea break, I interacted with a couple of women, and 3 of them separately asked me, "We hope you're staying the whole day," because I was opening the conference. I was the keynote address speaker. And one of them actually got so emotional, she had to be taken away. I had to talk to her on the side because she said there's something she connected with my speech. This was a business speech. And some of the mistakes she had done, she was able to connect with that. And she was saying, look, I wish you continue. The only reason is this. You can customize the message. You are putting it in our local context. And let me tell you this. While we invite these people to do jobs right here, they will never invite you to do jobs right there. And that's why Africans, we need to start celebrating our very own. It is time you start supporting our own restaurants and boutiques and supermarkets. That's the reality. And you'll only know this when you begin to travel. When you start seeing the destitute and the homeless among the whites. You know, Africans thought that the white man cannot die until they went for World War II. The biggest mistake the British made was to invite us for World War II. And then they realized, oh my God, these fellows are human beings. They came back and immediately brought a revolution all over Africa that led to independence. We got independence because of exposure. They had a different view of the same person. You see, we come in this world with no beliefs or convictions or perspectives or opinions. Our well-intended parents and teachers, especially teachers of early childhood, simply indoctrinated us with a set of beliefs and views and perspectives and convictions, which largely formed our early frame of reference. Regrettably, for most of us to date, we have never changed from there. So if you're raised in a hostile environment, you struggle loving others. If you never grew up with courtesy words like please, excuse me, thank you. You know the husbands and wives who only call each other at home, where? They never had anyone near them saying, honey, darling. And those words can't come from their lips, especially guys from Chuka, you know what I'm saying? Sorry, at a light note. And Kisi, and Muranga. Yeah. We need to congratulate our men from Nyanza. Luo Nyanza, not Kisi Nyanza. Luo Nyanza. Kisi is just like Meru. And why are our brothers from Luo Nyanza able to say darling? Because they had their father saying it, and their grandfather. It has been passed on from generation to generation. It is time we begin to challenge our realities, because your reality may not be the only reality. I think the most basic reality we all know is the law of gravity. We can't dispute with that. And if there is anyone who is going to argue against that law, immediately I'm through with this message, please climb at the top of Brilliant Towers, jump at University Way, and before you hit those vehicles there, you will know there's a law pulling you, called the law of gravity. But is that the only reality? If that were the only reality, please explain to me how a 575-ton, fully loaded A380 is able to get airborne. It is because there's a higher reality, the law of aerodynamics. So long as you don't understand higher laws, you'll always be a subject of lower laws. And my assignment tonight is to help you see life from a higher dimension. And this takes me to our second lesson tonight. Be a student of life.